Hi, this is Richard Carlton London, and you're listening to Clear Tales. The name of this story is The Incident at Maple Grove. This is going to be perfect for some of you listeners out there because, first, it's a very short book. Only 5 chapters, and each chapter is quite short too. You're going to love this one. Also, this story takes place in a senior center called Maple Grove. I'm guessing that some of you listeners out there have been to a senior center. I've been to a senior center more than once for sure. And this one takes place in one, so you're going to find some of the familiarity and humor behind the incident at Maple Grove. No, I'm sorry, it's not Maple Grove, it's Shady Maple. Ugh. I wrote this one very quickly between other books, and I hope you enjoy.
Chapter 1, Harold. The Maple Grove Senior Center had a smell you simply could not forget. First came the burnt haze of Mr. Coffee. The pot fused to its heating base by weeks of drips, caramelized into something permanent at the base, just waiting to burn when it started all over again in the morning. Then lemon polish. That was a smell. Pledged specifically on every wood and plastic surface in the building. And then came Harold Benton, manager of Maple Grove, who each morning applied enough cologne to drop a horse in its tracks. At the activity table, Eleanor wrinkled her nose at this cocktail of smells as Harold walked by. She rubbed a peeled corner of her playing card the way some women work a rosary. Beside her sat Frank, 75 or so, a few years younger than Eleanor, though you wouldn't know it to look at him. His poor hearing was a dead giveaway. Harold clapped his hands at the room of 10 or so residents, like a man trying to wake the dead. "Ladies and gentlemen," he called out to the room. No one moved. "Come on, people," he clapped again. "Welcome to Tuesday Trivia, Indiana's premier venue for intellectual brilliance." Frank leaned toward Eleanor and patted her arm. "I guess he means us." "Today's prize is a Hostess Twinkie," Harold continued. "Each correct answer earns a point. Most points get the Twinkie. Ready?" Harold's smile held. A ceiling fan turned. Someone's oxygen concentrator clicked and hissed. The group was quieter than heaven on a Saturday night. "Okay," he said. "I'll take that answer as a yes." His eyes swept the room. "First question. What is the capital of our state?" Uncomfortable silence settled into the room. "Go ahead. Just shout it out, people." "Columbus," a woman called from the back. "That's Ohio, dear. The capital of Indiana. That's where we live." "Indianapolis," Frank said. "Excellent, Frank. 1 point." Harold scratched a mark beside his name. "Second question. What is the motto on our state's license plate?" A harder question, this one. License plates lived on the backs of cars. Cars no one at the center drove anymore unless you worked there. Besides, the print was so small you couldn't read it with binoculars. Harold walked the aisles, slow-like. Most of the room watched him walk. "It's boring here," Jim answered from the front. "That's the state motto. It's boring here." "No," someone else said. "Who's your mama? That's what's on the plate. Who's your mama?" "Good effort. Both wrong," Harold replied. "Crossroads of America," Frank said flatly. "Right again, Frank." Another mark went up beside his name. Eleanor gave Frank a sidelong look. He smiled with a crooked half-smile. "I always win," he said, patting her arm. "Final question in this round, people. What year was Indiana admitted to the Union?" This one should stump even Frank. "Did you say beer?" a voice shouted from the back. "No, not beer. Year. What year was Indiana admitted to the Union?" Harold shouted back. At the rear wall, beside the lunch counter, Renee stood with a clipboard and a small speaker, dressed in her spandex tights and sparkling shoes. She looked up from a stretch. "Harold," she said in her Bronx accent that made everything sound like an accusation. "Speak up or move closer." "I'm already loud," Harold said. "Not to everyone." Harold gave a small bow. "Yes, ma'am." Betty moved quickly past the front of the room, a stack of folders pressed to her chest. Her face arranged into its usual frown. "Betty," Harold called. "Good news." "Paperwork," she said, and pushed through the door into the hallway without stopping, without turning. Harold asked Renee to cover for a moment and followed Betty, catching up near the administrative entrance. "Hey," he said quietly. "Not now, I'm busy." "You're always busy." "Today more than usual." "Just a minute," he said. "No, don't be like that," he pleaded. Betty's shoulders went rigid. "I said no." She ducked into the room and pulled the door shut behind her. Renee's voice cut across the hall. "Harold?" He turned. "Yes?" "Focus." He stepped back into the activity room with the smile still in place. "Okay. Frank's leading. Next question." Then lunch came. Weak vegetable soup, a shade too salty, accompanied with bread donated by a restaurant the night before, and applesauce for dessert. At the coffee urn, Harold drifted toward Betty the way he always did, a half step too close, his voice dropping to something that wasn't quite a whisper. "Meet me later." Betty's arm moved away before his hand could reach it. Frank set down his soup spoon and watched the exchange. He nudged Eleanor and tilted his head in their direction. Eleanor dropped her glasses to the tip of her nose and looked over the rims. "Looks like a rift." "No," Betty said, loud enough for just the two of them to hear. "Just talk, that's all," he pleaded. "No. You owe me that." Betty stepped back. "I don't owe you anything." She turned and walked down the hallway into the storage room. Harold watched her go. It was really just a walk-in closet. Pledge, Lysol wipes, cheap coffee, items people reordered without first counting. He drew a breath, let his shoulders settle, and followed her. Small bowls of applesauce were being set out along the aluminum lunch counter. Not a favorite dessert among the regulars, but it kept the bowels happy. Betty returned to the dining area, set her folders down on the counter, smoothed her dress, grabbed a bowl of applesauce, and stepped quickly to her office. She came back moments later, flushed, grabbed a spoon and her folders, and returned. Frank and Eleanor looked at each other. Renee had been watching too. Sensed that Betty was not herself, she gazed down the hall toward the storage room, paused, finished her lunch, and returned her lunch tray. Eleanor watched and stood up from her seat. "Where are you going?" Frank asked. "I'll split the Twinkie with you." "My sweater." "You don't need it." "I do." "You don't." Eleanor stood anyway. "I'm going," she said. Betty came around the corner fast and nearly bowled her over. "Oh, I'm sorry." "You're rushing," Eleanor said. "No, I'm not." "You nearly knocked me over. Are you okay?" Sorry about that, Mrs. Price. I'm fine. Betty's eyes flicked toward the storage room and away. Eleanor's eyes followed hers. Betty swallowed, the motion deliberate and slow. I have work to do, she said, and moved off quickly. Eleanor stood a moment longer, then walked toward the storage room. The door was slightly open, the lights off. A shadow moved and stepped out as the door swung wider. Renee. She stopped when she saw Eleanor and was visibly startled. You shouldn't be here, Renee said. This is the staff area, Eleanor. Eleanor looked past her into the dark room. Who's in there? Renee didn't answer right away. No one, she managed, stepping closer. Eleanor's eyes sharpened. Behind Renee, on the floor, something long and still. Eleanor's breath caught. That's us, not supplies. A beat passed. She took a step forward. Renee shifted to fill the doorway. Don't, she said. Eleanor held her ground. What happened? Renee's face didn't change, but something behind her eyes did. There's been an accident, she said in a single breath. Eleanor stared. What did you do? Eleanor could see the body on the floor. Harold. Too still. Eleanor whispered, Oh my. Renee turned toward the lunchroom and her tone shifted instantly, sharp and loud. Help! From down the hall came the sound of footsteps. Renee stepped back just enough. The hallway door burst open. What happened? Oh my God, someone said. Frank came too. He wedged himself into the cluster of Maple Grove staff in hoodies and smocks. He joined Eleanor in the doorway, his Twinkie in hand, and looked down at Harold. Oh my, he said, looking at Harold on the floor.